Losses, how the market and world leaders are reacting to the new normal. Plus, the region facing potentially catastrophic flooding from cresting rivers. The flooding emergency now looming over millions. And then the Real ID deadline marching in. What you need to do soon before the face of domestic traveling changes for good. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin with the harsh Wall Street sell-off following President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs seems to be leveling out. While the Dow Jones dropped just under 1% today, the S&P fell only 0.2 points, while the Nasdaq finished in the black, up 0.1%. A short while ago, the president indicated from the White House negotiations for a world of free trade are coming, and the EU said they are ready for a deal.
We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals.
Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
And we will have more on those negotiations of countries dropping tariffs on the U.S. in a minute, as the president turned down that 0 for 0 offer. But a trade war with China is escalating, as the White House today threatened an additional 50% tariffs on imports from China. All told, Chinese tariffs will equal 104%, and that does not include the pre-existing tariffs enacted during President Trump's first term. With more on these developments, here's Christine Frizell.
It's a reality President Trump says will take time to reverse. The heavy reliance by the United States on China, he says, has resulted in a huge imbalance on the world stage. In a post calling China the biggest abuser of all, following its 34% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. imports beginning Thursday, which, if it does not withdraw, Trump now threatening an additional 50% tariff effective April 9th.
China is right now taking a big hit because everyone knows we're right. They have to pay tariffs. We're not going to lose $1 trillion for the privilege of buying pencils from China.
Chinese officials call the tariffs unprovoked and unjustified.
President Xi has to demonstrate very quickly he's not going to get pushed around by an American president.
While President Trump insists the $1 trillion trade deficit with China is the top reason for the tariffs, he's also pushing China to do more on fentanyl, which experts say it's involved in at every level. Most of the precursor chemicals are made in China, then shipped to Mexico through ports owned by Chinese companies. A process detailed in Peter Schweitzer's Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans.
Those precursors are shipped to facilities run by the Mexican drug cartels. But according to our DEA, there are 2,000 Chinese nationals that essentially act as chemists to turn that into fentanyl.
During Trump's first term, Chinese President Xi Jinping vowed to put a stop to its involvement, a promise that ultimately wasn't kept, though tariffs could push them in the right direction, a move the White House is betting on as global trade continues its spiral.
I think using something that China values, which is access to our markets, is a very, very effective tool to aggressively deal with this issue of fentanyl.
A crisis in its own right, now interwoven with the economy as a whole. I'm Christine Frizell for the National News Desk.
Right now, 17 million people are still under flood alerts as a low-pressure system continues to impact several states. Multiple rivers across the South are expected to crest within the next few days, creating dangerous flooding conditions. And this all comes as crews are still cleaning up damage from severe storms in the Southeast and Midwest this past week. Heavy flooding, at least 90 reported tornadoes left at least 21 people dead. Dozens of people were rescued over the weekend in Anderson County, Kentucky.
We have had 4 days of severe weather, which has caused some of the most significant flooding, especially in the western part of our state, that we've ever seen. Dozens upon dozens of homes are going to be entirely ruined.
And a woman in Cheatham County, Tennessee, recalls a storm that blew through in a matter of minutes, leaving behind extensive damage.
So I ran in the house, and as I was running in, I said, I think I'm in a tornado.
The next thing she knew, it was raining inside her home where a tree had fallen right into it. The storm system is moving offshore, but more rain and thunderstorms are possible this evening from the southern mid-Atlantic to the southeast. Flooding is expected to remain an issue in multiple states for the next couple of days. Meantime, the measles outbreak in Texas has turned deadly again as a second unvaccinated child in the Lone Star State died over the weekend. This is the third death of the year related to the measles. An unvaccinated adult who tested positive for measles died in New Mexico last month. Officials are still investigating the cause of the death. The latest official numbers nationwide show, as you see right there, 642 confirmed cases of measles across 22 states. 499 of those have been in Texas. The CDC estimates that 97% of those infected were unvaccinated. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said yesterday the measles vaccine remains the most effective way to prevent the spread of the highly contagious disease. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stopping by the White House today to meet with President Donald Trump about expected topics like the war in the Middle East, as well as how to handle the global tariffs. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins was at the White House today.
President Trump unflinching, defending his tariffs as global markets swung wildly Monday.
We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system.
Netanyahu traveling to Washington to seek tariff relief for his country.
We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same.
While Trump and Netanyahu had no trade deal to announce Monday, they acknowledged progress was made. During the Oval Office press conference, Trump making a surprise announcement on Iran, saying there will be direct talks involving high-level officials from the two countries this Saturday. The meeting between Trump and Netanyahu comes at a crucial moment for the Israel-Gaza war. The ceasefire broke down last month and fighting resumed. Israel announcing last week they would seize large areas of Gaza.
And Didi, Egypt has presented the latest ceasefire proposal aimed at breaking the negotiation deadlock between Israel and Hamas. That plan would include the release of 8 hostages in exchange for 40 to 70 days of a pause in fighting and the release of more Palestinian prisoners.
I know you keep tabs on that, Kayla. Also, back to that Oval Office meeting today, we learned today that Japan's prime minister could be the next to visit Washington to discuss tariffs. Any more information on when we can expect from that meeting, what we can expect?
So we did get that confirmation in the Oval Office today. Trump saying he'd spoken with Japan's prime minister this morning, and the Japanese are coming to visit Washington. Trump's issue with Japan appears to center mostly around car sales. Today, Trump said the U.S. sold 0 cars in Japan, and the Japanese sell millions of cars in the U.S. Trump said other countries will be coming to visit as well. That tally right now is sitting at around 50 that are trying to work out these trade deals with the White House.
All right, Kayla Gaskins joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you. New tonight, a split appeals court ruled today that 2 board members fired by Trump can go back to their jobs for now. Kathy Harris of the Merit Systems Protection Board and Gwen Wilcox of the National Labor Relations Board challenged their firings, arguing they were given no explanation. A Trump administration appeal is likely setting up a battle at the Supreme Court over whether firing members of independent agency boards has to be justified. The Supreme Court rejected to hear the appeal on the constitutionality of New York's good and moral character law. The law bans handguns from sensitive places like schools, parks, and public theaters, and requires residents to show they have a good and moral character to legally obtain a firearm. By not hearing the case, the law stands. The state of New York will be keeping its diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and programs in their public schools, going against President Donald Trump's mandate, requiring states to end those policies. States have until April 12th to comply, or they risk losing federal education funds. So far, at least 31 states have indicated they will comply with this order. Boeing has settled 2 cases for an undisclosed amount of money with the families of 2 victims killed in a March 2019 crash that took the lives of 157 people, and in 2018 that killed 181 passengers. Jury selection was to begin today in those civil trials. In 2021, Boeing accepted criminal liability for both crashes. The plane manufacturer still faces at least 2 more civil trials brought by families set for July and November, unless a settlement is reached in those cases. Coming up, the Supreme Court has stepped into the Trump administration's accidental deportation case. What happens next? Plus, the states that are lagging behind as the deadline for everyone to upgrade to real IDs gets closer. Then, a possible setback in the fight to protect people from exposure to a toxic gas leaking from medical facilities across the country. We'll be right back after this. Lawmakers in Maryland are pushing back on President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. The House of Delegates just passed a bill prohibiting immigration and customs enforcement officials from entering places like schools, libraries, as well as churches without a warrant. The Senate now has to vote on it by midnight tonight. If it passes there, it will head to the governor's desk. And the Supreme Court has blocked an order requiring the Trump administration to bring back a deported Maryland father from a notorious El Salvador prison. His national correspondent Matt Galka tells us the White House believes they took a gang member off the streets, while multiple courts contend the man's rights were violated.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia was detained by ICE agents last month and sent to an El Salvador mega prison, even though he had protective status in the U.S. and had authorization from DHS to work in the country. The White House alleges Abrego Garcia is an MS-13 gang member.
MS-13 is just as bad as Tren de Aragua. So they say, oh, we made a mistake because he's not with them, he's with MS-13. Bring him back, bring him back. MS-13 is a very bad group.
ICE has testified, members of ICE, that he is an MS-13 gang member. And the defense, his lawyers, have argued, well, he should be here because he was studying to be an electrician. The argument that because these people are living among us, these illegal aliens from El Salvador, means they're not part of a gang. That's how they're hiding. That's how they're succeeding.
The Trump administration has described Abrego Garcia's deportation as an administrative error while maintaining he's involved with MS-13. They've also said they don't have the power to get him back from El Salvador. Abrego Garcia's family has strongly denied he has gang ties.
On March 12, 2025, my husband Kilmer was abducted by the U.S. government. In a blink of an eye, our 3 children lost their father, and I lost the love of my life.
Multiple judges' rulings have scolded the administration for the actions taken against Abrego Garcia. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnis wrote the order demanding the man's return, calling his detention wholly lawless. A federal appeals court denied the Trump administration's request to put that order on hold Monday, writing the government must clean up the mess it has made. The administration argues the ruling is another example of court overreach, with the Solicitor General bashing the number of injunctions courts have imposed already, and saying the order to return Abrego Garcia gives the district court outsized diplomatic power. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelko for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
11 students and recent grads from Harvard and Stanford no longer have visas, according to the universities. Hundreds of students nationwide have now had their visas revoked, many of whom were involved in campus protests, according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This past weekend, Rubio also took away the visas of people from South Sudan and stopped issuing new ones. He said the country's government had failed to accept deported citizens back in a timely manner.
Beginning 1 month from today, all airline passengers aged 18 and over, including TSA PreCheck members, must present a state-issued real ID credential or an alternative acceptable form of identification, the most common being a passport, at our security checkpoints.
On May 7th, the Real ID Act goes into effect across the country. The TSA estimates they currently see about 80% compliance among ID cards at the airport, but some states are lagging. The secretaries of states of both Pennsylvania and Maine claim only about 25% of eligible residents had Real ID compliant forms of identification last month. So if you need it, you can get a Real ID at the DMV or MVA in all 50 states, 5 territories, and the District of Columbia. You will need a valid ID, passport or birth certificate, social security number, proof of birth date, and 2 items to prove your state of residence. You can still get a Real ID after May 7th, but you just may have trouble traveling in the meantime. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, D.C., where Capitals fans are celebrating Alex Ovechkin, who just became the NHL's all-time leading scorer.
Take a look. The special Ovi shop here at Capital One Arena has now opened, and fans are already in here picking up their special merchandise commemorating this huge accomplishment. And they've all got all kinds of stuff: shirts, sweatshirts, hats, caps, the cups.
Huge fans.
Special time.
It's so exciting. And also because there's still more games left, so I think there's going to be more goals to come.
Ford employee pricing for most new Ford cars for every customer in the U.S. Ford made that announcement Wednesday for the new initiative that went into effect Thursday. And it's now got Ford dealerships across the country and right here in the Central Valley pretty revved up.
It's really unprecedented. The last time I remember happening was maybe 20 years ago. So we're really, really excited about it.
It's under invoice, under MSRP. You're getting a better price than a dealership employee pays.
Ford says it's offering the deal to help quell the anxiety many Americans are now feeling about buying a new car and the impact the new tariffs will have on their price.
You are about to see a bird napping in progress. The man in the video is hovering above the open bird display at the Petland store in Fairfield. Once the other customers walk away, he nabs a bird and scurries out the door.
This is a ringneck. They're amazing birds. They learn how to talk. They're great. He was $1,000.
Then 2 days later at a Petland about a half hour away near Mason,
a customer came into the store asking if we sold a specific brand of dog food, making conversation, just, getting our defenses down, I guess.
Then, just like in Fairfield, the bird napper struck again. Fairfield police received a call from an employee at a nearby store who had seen the story on Local 12's morning newscast and recognized the man in the video as 44-year-old Dauntas McCoy. Police went to his home in College Hill where they recovered the birds and arrested him.
Coming up next, a new development in the effort to remove a carcinogen from the air in communities across the U.S. Stay with us. We're back in 90 seconds. For years, Spotlight on America has been investigating an invisible gas blamed for causing cancer in communities nationwide. The EPA took decisive action last year to rein in emissions and protect millions of Americans. And now the agency may be changing course, leaving serious questions about those toxic exposures.
It just seems common sense that you can't spew poison in the air.
But communities across America say it's been happening for years, silently putting their health at risk.
We are breathing a deadly carcinogen.
Millions of Americans live near facilities that emit ethylene oxide, or ETO, a colorless, odorless gas used to sterilize billions of pieces of critical medical equipment. Studies show exposure to ETO has been linked to leukemia, lymphoma, and breast cancer.
Midwest is how far away?
About 4 or 5 blocks.
For the past 5 years, Spotlight on America has visited several communities living in the shadow of these facilities where residents suffer from increased cancer risk.
We are sick and we are dying.
The federal government has taken years to act. Last spring, the EPA issued this rule designed to rein in emissions by more than 90% to significantly decrease the cancer risk to surrounding communities. Now, less than a year later,
today, I'm pleased to make the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history.
The new head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, announced the agency will reconsider a list of more than 30 clean air rules, including the one reducing ETO emissions from commercial sterilizers.
It's incredibly disappointing.
Marvin Brown is a supervising senior attorney at Earth Justice, pushing for strong ETO regulations for years.
Is this a big blow?
It is. It is. We suspect that what they're going to try and do is undo the health protections that have come in this new rule. And if they do decide to do that, that will be absolutely devastating for communities all across the United States.
The EPA says it can reconsider the rules while ensuring appropriate protections for health. The agency declined our request for an interview and did not answer our questions, instead referring us to this fact sheet citing the cost of compliance for industry and potential threat to the nation's medical supply as reasons to review and potentially revise the rule. Some in the sterilization industry have argued against the new regulation, also citing costs and saying the deadline for compliance in April of 2026 does not provide enough time to make upgrades.
Nearly 2/3 of these facilities are owned by major Fortune 500 corporations. So I think they can afford the cost of protecting communities that are breathing in these toxic emissions. Probably one of my most prized possessions now.
Brown says this drawing from a child in Laredo, Texas, near one of the ETO facilities, symbolizes their continuing fight.
What do you want to say to all the people who live nearby these facilities?
I would say don't give up hope.
For now, the EPA's current rule on ETO emissions is still in effect. We'll be following it closely and keep you posted on any developments. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Coming up next year, we'll preview the NCAA's men's basketball tournament final tipping off in just a couple hours. That's right after this. In October.
Over the course of this amazing season, the members of this team gave us some of the most incredible performances ever seen on the baseball diamond.
And the Dodgers are off to a fast start again this season at 9-2. They set a record to start the season as the first defending champion to begin 8-0. And in about 2.5 hours in San Antonio, the NCAA men's basketball tournament final tips off between the Florida Gators and the Houston Cougars. Both teams came from behind to win on Saturday, with Houston pulling off the near impossible, defeating Duke while trailing by 6 points with under 1 minute to go in the game. Florida remains a 1-point favorite to win the game. All comes down to tonight. That is going to do it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening starting at 10 p.m. for more coverage of America's top stories. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight.